Chapter 81, Provocation from the Corrupt Sect, Subscription Request. The nobles became excited as they listened to Sylvia's words. An extraordinary level item. This can be said to be a very generous reward. There are not many extraordinary professionals in the entire kingdom, and extraordinary items are even rarer. You have triggered the mission traces of corrupted believers and saints. Rank B. The Golden Church wants to find corrupt believers, and Sylvia also wants to find her daughter. Mission. Objective 1. Help the Golden Church find the hidden corrupt believers. Task reward, 30 experience points, Golden Law affinity plus 10%. Mission Objective 2. Find Saint Ophanina and tell Sylvia her whereabouts. Quest reward, 30 experience points, Golden Law affinity plus 10%, and an extraordinary level item. A task panel popped up in front of Lier's eyes. Looking at the content on it, he raised his eyebrows. I have to say that this former saint is better at doing things than you are. Unlike you are, who made direct demands on the nobles in the name of the Grand Priest of the Golden Church, he offered them rewards instead. You won't find it. A voice suddenly sounded in the banquet hall. An old man slowly walked out from the crowd. He looked haggard and pale, not like a living person. Upon seeing this, the nobles around him dispersed, leaving only the old man standing in the middle. Father! The Duke of Norton was stunned when he saw this. That was his father-in-law, Rory Hadji, the Marquis of the Kingdom. Marquis Hadji ignored Duke Norton and just stared at Sylvia. You will never find your daughter. The corrupt believers have already turned your daughter into the mother of corruption. Your daughter will become a sacrifice for the coming of the true spirit of the corrupt law. The old man roared. Everyone was shocked by the appearance of Marquis Hadji. Sylvia frowned. She didn't know the old man in front of her, but she could sense the faint aura of heresy and law from him. Father! What are you talking about? Duke Norton was terrified. He had finally managed to calm the Stuart family's anger, and now his father-in-law had offended the High Priest of the Golden Sea? Get out! Vicente! You are not worthy to call me father. Marquis Hadji glared at Duke Norton. You couldn't even protect Eric. That's my grandson, and what did you do? Duke Norton's face turned ugly. He forced himself to suppress his emotions and wanted to calm Marquis Hadji down. At this moment, Sylvia came over. What did you say? Marquis Hadji looked Sylvia straight in the eye. Unafraid, I said you'll never find your daughter. Your daughter will be sacrificed. Before Marquis Hadji could finish his words, the sacred golden law pressed Marquis Hadji to the ground. High Priest Sylvia. Duke Norton was shocked when he saw this. He was corrupted by the laws, Sylvia said calmly. At this time, everyone realized that Marquis Hadji on the ground was emitting black mist, which was constantly purified by the magic of the golden law around him. Take him away. He has come into contact with corrupt believers and must know the whereabouts of those corrupt believers. Sylvia said coldly. You won't find it. The corrupt true spirit will eventually come. Marquis Hadji laughed wildly. The black mist became thicker and thicker, and finally with a crisp sound, Marquis Hadji's body exploded and turned into minced meat on the ground. The banquet hall fell silent. The corrupt believers actually manipulated a marquis and waited for Sylvia to come and provoke him. This is a complete disregard for the royal family and the Golden Church. Sylvia's face turned ugly and he became a little irritable. Thinking of what Marquis Hadji had just said, he couldn't help but feel a little worried. After learning that her daughter was missing, she requested a response from the Golden Law, wanting to know her daughter's whereabouts. After all, Ophanina is now the saint and has been blessed by gold. She believed that the Golden Rule must know where Ophelia was, but the response she got was vague, only saying that Ophelia's life was not in danger, and instead asked her to teach the heir of the Stuart family a lesson. Sylvia was very confused, but didn't get any other useful information. She looked at Lear, who was eating watermelon not far away. Why did the goddess of the Golden Rule ask her to teach the heir of Stuart a lesson? Let's clean up the things here. Sylvia waved his hand and said to the golden cultist beside him. King Rosser also reacted at this time and said angrily, Damn corrupt believers, how dare you despise the dignity of the royal family like this? The nobles around were talking about it, and were also shocked by the behavior of the corrupt believers. Not all nobles were powerful professionals. If the corrupt believers were able to manipulate Marquis Hadji, then they would also have a chance to manipulate them. Your Majesty, I believe that we must eliminate the corrupt heretics from the royal city as soon as possible. We can't let them be so arrogant anymore. Someone stood up righteously. Many nobles also echoed. Sylvia sighed, shook her head, and walked over to Lear and Albert. She looked at Lear and said, "Can we talk alone?" Lear was stunned and became alert. He remembered that he had no connection with the high priest. Why did the other party come up to him and talk to him? "Albert, I just have something I want to ask your son alone." "I won't hurt him," Sylvia explained. "My son has never met you, what do you have to ask?" Albert did not give in. He suddenly widened his eyes as if he had thought of something. "You are not attracted to Lear, are you? Although your husband has passed away for many years, you are more than 20 years older than Lear." Albert's voice was quite loud, and the noisy banquet hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked in Sylvia's direction with a hint of surprise in their eyes. Sylvia was stunned for a moment, and felt the gazes from all around, and her face instantly turned red. "Albert, what nonsense are you talking about? I just want to ask Lear if he knows some information about Ophelia. Who would like your son?" Sylvia felt a mixture of shame and indignation. It turned out that the believers of the law of war were not very smart. No matter what she said, it was impossible for her to find a child who was more than 20 years younger than her. She was once a saint, how could she do such a shameless thing? "Okay, father, I believe the high priest is not such a person." Lear shrugged and looked at Sylvia. "Your Excellency the High Priest, I don't have much useful information about Her Highness the Saint. Her Highness the Saint and I have only met a few times, so we are not familiar with each other," he said with a harmless expression. End of this chapter. Chapter 82, The Queen's Crisis, Subscription Request. Before the banquet was over, Sylvia left amid the strange looks of the nobles. Although she said she was not interested in Lear, how many nobles believed her was another matter. Chatting with a handsome young nobleman for no reason would indeed arouse people's imagination, and Sylvia, who is in her 40s, still looks charming and attractive to many nobles. Whether it's appearance or status. A beautiful widow who was once a saint sounds quite exciting. Lear tasted the royal delicacies boredly. Only important nobles were invited to this banquet, but not their children. The only young noble children who came here were Lear, Tivany, and Adele. The old nobles all came to Albert, leaving Lear's young descendants aside. Looking at Lear, who seemed absent-minded, Devine seemed to be hesitant to speak. She wanted to say something but didn't know how to start. Adele, on the other hand, seemed to have become a real servant, pouring wine for Lear and glancing at Tivany from time to time with a hint of provocation in her eyes. Devine frowned, a little annoyed, and glared back. The two women secretly competed with each other. Lear ignored the fight between the two women and looked at the nobles in the banquet hall, finally landing on Queen Philia. After a round of socializing, the ladies around the queen left one by one, and finally the queen was left alone. Lear thought for a moment, put down the wineglass in his hand, and walked straight towards the queen. "Your Majesty, can we chat for a while?" Lear asked politely when he came to the queen. Ophelia was stunned for a moment, then blinked her beautiful blue eyes. "What do you want?" "About Milia," Lear said in a low voice. The queen's expression changed slightly, and she looked around inconspicuously, then said, "I'm going to go to the compartment where we talked before. Come back later, don't let anyone see you." As she said this, the queen smiled at Lear, pretended to go to the bathroom, and left the hall. Seeing this, Lear picked up the dessert beside him and took a bite. After about a few minutes, he also walked outside. After knocking on the compartment door, Lear walked in. Queen Philia had been waiting for a long time. When she saw Lear come in, she looked at him closely and said, "Tell me, what happened to Milia?" Lear pondered for a moment and told the queen about Miriam's dream. "You mean Milia saw what would happen in the future?" The queen frowned. "That's probably the case. Milia's morning star law should be awakening soon." Lear nodded. The queen was silent for a while, then said, "Don't worry about this matter, just hide Milia." "Your Majesty, I remember that you seem to be able to see the future. You should be able to see what Milia dreamed of." Lear asked in a deep voice, "I can't see it." The queen shook her head and sighed. "Astrologers can see the future, but they can't see their own destiny." As expected, the queen is an astrologer of the law of morning star. Lear was certain in his heart, but he didn't know what level of astrologer the queen was. "Now that you know the future, what do you plan to do next?" Lear asked again. "Let it be. Now that I know the future, I will be more careful. Thank you for telling me this news." The queen smiled. The queen leaves, leaving Lear alone. Lear found it very strange that when the queen heard that she was abandoned by the king and burned as a heretic, her face did not show any emotion. The king and the queen seemed to love each other, and Lear was confused. When Lear returned to the hall again, the queen had come to the king's side, and Albert was there too. The three of them felt quite pleasant talking. Lear did not disturb them, but just waited quietly for the banquet to end. On the way home in the carriage, Lear looked at Albert sitting opposite him and asked, "Father, are you familiar with the queen? Did you see it?" Albert glanced at Lear, then said with some regret, "We used to be good friends. Rosser could become king because of me and Philia. Philia's ability to predict the future was a great help." "Do you know that the queen has the ability to predict the future?" Lear was a little surprised, of course. "Then you also know that the queen is a professional in heresy law?" "I know." Albert nodded, then looked at Lear with amusement. "Not only do I know that the queen is a professional in heresy law, I also know that you hid the princess and colluded with the queen to fool those nobles." Lear showed an embarrassed expression. It seemed that the queen had told Albert about Milia. "When we get back, Greta and I will move out and not disturb your lives, so as to avoid being discovered by Greta." Albert smiled. Lear shrugged and asked another question. "Father, since you know that the queen is a heretic and the king is a believer of the Golden Church, aren't you afraid that the queen's affairs will be exposed?" "Rosser will protect Philia." Albert shook his head. "What if the Golden Church finds out about the queen's affairs?" Lear continued, questioning his soul. "Will His Majesty the King still protect Her Majesty the Queen at that time?" Albert was stunned. He had never thought about such a question before. The Golden Church has always hated heretics. As a believer in gold, Rosser's sheltering of the queen is a great disrespect to the Golden Law. If the queen's affairs are really discovered by the Golden Church, will Rosser still stand up for the queen? Albert was silent. He recalled the confident tone of Rosser's voice when he handed Philia to him. "I believe in Rosser," he said quietly. Lear raised his eyebrows and said nothing more. He trusted his own judgment more than the feeling that Albert and Rosser had not seen each other for more than 10 years. Time will change a person. The carriage slowly returned to the Stewart mansion. Albert went straight back to his room to rest, while Lear came to the hall. When he walked in, Lear saw Li Huan and Dahe sitting on chairs waiting anxiously. He was a little surprised that the player actually came to him on his own initiative. Before Lear could speak, Li Huan stood up and said, "Mr. Lear, we have something important to report." Raising his eyebrows, he put the top hat on the shelf beside him and asked with a smile, "What happened?" "We have found the whereabouts of the corrupt believers," Li Huan said shockingly. End of this chapter. Chapter 83, Tomb Raider Treasure Hunter. "You mean you saw corrupt believers in the Lord's graveyard?" After listening to the two people's stories, Lear said with some surprise, "This luck is too good. It was Dahe who found Divine before, and now he has encountered the corrupt believers who were in hiding. During the public beta test in the previous life, it was not uncommon to discover heretics due to the increase in the number of players, but now it is a closed beta test, and it seems that there are only Li Huan and 3 others in the entire Brayful Royal City. In this situation, I encountered corrupt believers one after another, which felt like being struck by lightning. Yes, Yao Yao has been captured. Can you please save Yao Yao?" Li Huan said nervously. "Her message board has been flooded with Yao Yao's chat, and she will send a message for help in a while." Lear pondered for a few seconds and nodded. "I understand. The news you brought me is very important. I can save your companions, but I still need to confirm the authenticity of the matter. Can you take me to the place where you saw the corrupt believers?" "Of course, no problem." Li Huan agreed immediately. "If the authenticity of the news is confirmed, I will reward you." Lear said seriously, "You have triggered the mission, Traces of Corrupted Believers, sea level. You have discovered traces of corrupt believers, which is of great interest to Lear. Mission objective, take Lear to find the hidden corrupt believers. Quest reward, 10,000 experience points, 10 gold coins. Lil Stewart's favorability, any elementary spell or swordsmanship skill." Lear casually assigned a task to the player. Giving the player some appropriate benefits can increase the player's enthusiasm. Li Huan and Dahe's eyes lit up. They didn't expect there would be such a pleasant surprise. Although the rewards were only elementary spells and swordsmanship skills, they were still very happy. And now it's the beginner level. What about later? There will always be opportunities to get advanced, extraordinary, or even higher skills. If there's no problem, let's go now. Lear put on his coat again. It was almost night, and going out would not be too conspicuous. Lier did not want the player's secret to be known to other forces too early. Li Huan and Dahe did not hesitate. The sooner they completed the task, the sooner they would get the reward. Half an hour later, the three arrived at the location of the Lord's tomb. It was pitch black here, no one could be seen, and the entire cemetery was shrouded in a thin layer of mist, making it look like it was wrapped in a layer of gauze. Lier was keenly aware of a strange feeling. There was a slight stench in the air, which might be normal in an ordinary cemetery, but this was a Lord's cemetery. The nobles will not allow their cemeteries to become smelly. Let's go in and take a look. Lier didn't think too long and walked into the cemetery. Li Huan followed behind, but Dahe looked nervous. It's not a good idea to enter the cemetery so late at night, right? He said tremblingly. When he turned around, Lier and Li Huan had already walked away. He gritted his teeth and finally followed. As they entered the cemetery, everything looked very tidy, but a gloomy feeling hung over everyone. The deeper they went into the cemetery, the stronger the feeling became. After walking for 5 or 6 minutes, Lier stopped. Auntie, I better leave now. If I sneak into the Lord's cemetery, I'll be caught. A faint voice came from not far away. What are you afraid of? There's no one here, and no one will know. I can feel that there must be treasures here. The nose of a treasure hunter will never make mistakes. Another crisp voice sounding a little childish. Lier stood there motionless, his expression becoming a little strange through the towering tombstones. He saw 2 people not far away. A girl who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old, carrying a backpack and wearing round-framed glasses. The other was an acquaintance. Lier almost forgot about this person. He took out a gold coin and asked him to find the whereabouts of an NPC. Then he disappeared, and even the blood mark he had left on the other person disappeared. Is there anyone here? Li Huan also heard the conversation not far away. Lier made a hushing gesture. Be quiet. Mr. Lier, are they also corrupt believers? Li Huan asked, looking at the 2 figures not far away. No. Lier shook his head, just 2 grave robbers. Tomb robber? Li Huan opened her eyes wide. Lier nodded, and indeed he could be called a tomb robber. From the girl's words just now, he already knew the other party's identity. Treasure hunters are professionals under the law of treasure, and are also professionals under the law of heresy. Very rare, keen on exploring various treasures, not very strong attacking ability, but the ability to escape and search for treasures is first class. Lier had only heard of these treasure hunters in his previous life. Their whereabouts were too elusive. However, once you meet one, if you are lucky, you will meet a treasure hunter with a good personality and you can buy something from him. They only accept gold, or barter. If you are unlucky and the other party has a bad character, your belongings may be stolen from you. Are they here to steal the treasures in the Lord's tomb? Asked Dahe, who finally caught up. Maybe. Lier shrugged and said nothing more, but followed the 2 people in front. He remembered that when he came to the royal city of Brayful on a mission in his previous life, there was no Lord's cemetery in the noble district, and it had become a wasteland. He also had never heard of any good things here. The 2 people in front continued to go deeper into the cemetery, and the 3 people behind also kept a distance and followed, and soon they reached the deepest part. There are various tall tombstones erected here, which are taller and more exquisitely carved than the places we passed before. There is also a fountain statue in the center, which depicts the founding king of Brayful. Walking to the fountain, the treasure hunter girl walked directly into the fountain and fiddled with it for a while. The flowing water stopped, the statue began to rotate, and then slowly sank. A deep tomb passage appeared before my eyes. Is there a secret passage here? Jim on the side said in surprise. When he was about to go forward to check, he was stopped by the girl. This underground cemetery looks quite large, and there are signs that it has been opened. We have to be careful. The girl's tone was a little excited. After the cemetery was opened, she smelled a strong scent of treasure. There must be a big treasure here. No matter who it is, even if you leave before me, the baby will definitely be mine. The girl said viciously, then kicked Jim into the tomb, and then walked in herself. End of this chapter. Chapter 84. The tail end. Jim was very depressed and scared to death ever since Lier asked him to find someone named Ina. His miserable life began. The person was found, but he was also implicated. Who would have known that this petite-looking girl actually possessed incredible power? Jim was tied up when they first met. The other party said that he had the power of heretical laws and forced him to ask where he had been infected with heresy. Jim thought that apart from occasionally cheating people out of money, he had always been a good citizen, so how could he be a heretic? But the girl named Anna refused to give in. She directly imprisoned Jim and imposed a restraint contract on him, making Jim a complete prisoner. "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and go," Ina urged. Jim walked forward resignedly, looking as if he had lost all hope in life. Outside the tomb, after a while, Lear came out and walked into the tomb without hesitation. The crypt was larger than Lear had imagined. It was more like an underground palace than a crypt. The walls are inlaid with crystals for lighting, which light up automatically when people pass by. Lear followed the two people in front of him, keeping a safe distance, and would not catch up until they turned the corner to avoid being discovered. Li Juan and Dahe also followed Lear closely. The feeling of following him in a tomb was particularly exciting. As he approaches Jim, Lear finds himself regaining awareness of the blood mark on Jim's body. "Can you contact the captured Yao Yao? Where is she?" Lear turned his head and asked Li Juan carefully. Li Juan checked the location and frowned. "The distance is not far, but it seems to be further down." "Further down?" Lear was stunned for a moment, a little confused, but he soon understood what Li Juan meant by further down. When he turned a corner, his vision suddenly became wider and a spiral staircase leading downward came into view. Below he could see that the stairs connected many levels, and each level was built like a palace, exquisite and luxurious. Looking at the scene before him, Lear was shocked. "You call this a crypt?" Ina and Jim in front were obviously shocked by the scene before them. "There is such a huge palace under the royal city?" Jim couldn't believe it. He was just a liar before. He finally wanted to get close to the Stuart family, but he died before he could accomplish his goal and was caught. He knew nothing about the secrets of the royal family and nobles. "Don't be stunned. I can already feel where the treasure is." Ina quickly recovered from her shock and rushed down the stairs following the smell. She kept looking around at each level. There were various funerary objects placed in the palace, but most of them had decayed. Those that were not decayed were just ordinary royal utensils and could be considered antiques, but this kind of thing is worthless to the treasure hunter. Soon she came to the bottom floor and pushed open the door of the palace. The hall was covered with dust. In the center, there was a tall sculpture. The sculpture's eyes glowed with a faint blue light. A decayed person was hung in front of the sculpture, emitting a foul smell. On the body of the hung person, you can see densely packed maggots wriggling constantly. Yana was shocked by the scene in front of her. What on earth was this disgusting thing? She felt the power of heretical laws from him, which was similar to the corruption that had ravaged the royal city before. The person hanging in the air was still alive. When he saw the people breaking into the palace, he raised his head and a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. Not far away, Lear, Li Juan and the other two also came to the outside of the palace. They saw the situation inside through the open door and also saw the person hanging in the air. Even though the man's face was rotten beyond recognition, Lear still recognized his identity at a glance. Eric, the former son of the Duke, has become such a half-human, half-ghost appearance, and the corrupt believers only treat Eric as a pawn. Li Juan and Dahe also saw Yao Yao tied to a chair on the other side. Yao Yao had a sad and angry expression on her face, with many wounds on her body and maggots crawling on them. It can be seen that the corrupt believers were very careful and did not cut Yao Yao into pieces directly. If they had killed him directly and resurrected him somewhere else, such a good test subject would have been lost. "Oh, there's a guest." A gloomy voice sounded from the depths of the palace. Dritch slowly walked out of the darkness, and the corrupt black mist on his body became thicker and thicker. Since entering the catacombs, his strength has increased rapidly. Even he himself did not expect that the catacombs of the kingdom of Brayfield would be so spectacular, with the bodies of kings from past dynasties neatly placed in rooms everywhere. Those are all top-quality materials. By corrupting those corpses into undead, Derek's strength is once again enhanced. He was confident that if he returned to the slums and condensed his true body into a carrion giant again, he would be able to go head-to-head with Stuart's lion. "Corrupt believer! You are still alive." Ina looked at the black-robed man in front of her who was emitting a foul smell, and covered her nose with some disgust. Jim on the side was so scared that he peed his pants. The corrupt believer? The same corrupt believer who nearly destroyed the entire ghetto. He wanted to turn around and run, but he found his legs were too weak to stand up, and he sat down on the ground. Delicky frowned and looked at the two people in front of him. A little girl and a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was an ordinary person, and although he couldn't tell who the little girl was, from the aura she exuded, he could tell that she was at most a mid-level professional. How can a mid-level professional speak to me like this with such confidence? He is a plague warlock of extraordinary level. Since you know that I'm a corrupt believer, aren't you afraid that I'll turn you into an undead? Derek narrowed his eyes. Aina curled her lips. It was not like she had never seen a super powerful person before. Although she couldn't beat him, he couldn't stop her if she wanted to run. She ignored Delicky's words and looked around the palace. The treasure she sensed was there. Delicky looked at the little girl in front of him who ignored him and felt angry. I was actually ignored? Little girl, I don't know who you are, but your attitude makes me very dissatisfied. I will turn you into my most exquisite doll. Delicky said angrily. Aina still didn't look at Delicky. Her eyes fell on the tall statue. When she saw the statue's eyes flashing with a faint blue light, her eyes lit up instantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 85. The corrupted founding king. Aina's mood became a little excited. As soon as she entered the palace, she felt a sense of repressive force, which was suppressing the power of law in her body. This repressive force suppressed the sacrifices hanging in the sky, so the smell of corruption could not be completely spread out. Only there was a slight stench in the cemetery outside. There is no doubt that anything that has the ability to suppress the power of the law must be a great treasure. She glanced at the corrupt believer who was still threatening her. What a stupid fool he was. He had such a great treasure but was completely unaware of it. She shook her head with a disdainful expression, then jumped onto the statue, and reached out to grab the statue's eyes. Delicky was irritated by Aina's attitude. Little girl, you've completely irritated me. He waved his hand, and a roar came from the shadows behind him. A majestic aura came from behind, and heavy footsteps sounded in the darkness. A figure in gray armor walked out slowly. His face was pale and the sword in his hand was already rotten, but he still held the sword tightly, like a glorious knight. Lear looked at the figure that appeared, his eyes slowly widened, and the face of the person in front of him was exactly the same as the sculpture on the fountain in the cemetery outside. The founding king of Briefil. Rochelle Briefil. The legendary war saint. Saints are immortal. Even after hundreds of years, the body of this founding king has not decayed and retains its original appearance. Aina, who was riding on the sculpture's head, was also startled by the sudden appearance of the founding king and became a little nervous. She pressed hard on the sculpture's eyes, but the gems inlaid in the eyes showed no sign of loosening. Rocher, go and arrest the girl who desecrated the royal tomb. Derek gave the order. Rochelle raised his head, looked at the girl sitting on top of the statue, raised his sword, and rushed up in one step. The speed is unbelievably fast. The former saint has now turned into an undead, but he still has extraordinary strength. Lear could see that this founding king was a knight of war. In fact, the original lineage of the kingdom of Briefil was a believer in war just like the Stuarts, but as the faith of the Golden Church spread, the royal family has now become believers in gold. I wonder what the founding king would think if he knew about this? Aina showed an angry expression. Who was the one who desecrated the royal tomb? She wanted to call the other party shameless, but Rocher had already arrived in front of her. The long sword swung down swiftly. Boom. A loud roar sounded, the entire statue was broken into pieces, and the treasure embedded in the statue's eyes flew out with the pieces. The long sword in Rohel's hand also had some cracks due to the violent impact. Aina had already dodged Rohel's attack with a flash. The treasure hunter may not be good at other things, but he is very good at saving his life. She saw the treasure flying in the air and rushed towards it. Once you get the treasure, teleport away from here with Jim. Her eyes rolled and she had already thought of a plan, but just when she was about to get the treasure, a white hand got the gem before her. Aina's eyes widened. Lear's figure jumped down from the air nimbly, holding the gem of the statue's eye in his hand. Name, Starlight Ceiling. Stone category, Legal Relics. Introduction. The light of the stars will make all forces return to silence. Effect. Passive placement can continuously suppress all surrounding law abilities. An active activation of the power of the Starlight Ceiling Stone can seal the surrounding law abilities, including the holder itself, for 10 minutes and a cooldown of 24 hours. It really takes no effort to get it without trying to find anywhere. Lear originally asked Jim to find Aina just for this seal stone. He originally planned to capture Ophelia after getting this seal stone, but later Ophelia took the initiative to find him and gave Lear the opportunity, so this seal stone was no longer necessary. I didn't expect that I would get the seal stone under such circumstances. Who are you? Aina was angry. When had anyone been able to snatch things from her treasure hunter? Just a passerby. Lear smiled. Derek and Eric, who was half dead in the air, also saw Lear. The former's expression became a little ugly, while the latter seemed to have recovered some spirit in his body began to tremble. Stuart's heir. Ridge called out Lear's identity. His affairs in the royal crypt should have been a secret, but now they were known by the nobles of the kingdom. We can't let Lear leave, he made the decision in an instant. If the Golden Church and other nobles knew his whereabouts, it would be disastrous. Derek suddenly raised his head, and Rohel, who was not far away, had a flash of green light in his eyes and rushed towards Lear again. Seeing this, Lear and Ina did not dare to be careless and quickly dodged. Ina looked at the man who had snatched her treasure not far away, and her teeth were itching with anger. Jim on the ground also saw Lear at this time and became excited. In addition to Rohel, there were dark shadows slowly walking towards the side from the depths of the palace. Strike has awakened all the undead. Ina gritted her teeth. She had to leave. The treasure had been taken away and it seemed that it could not be taken back. You robber. Just wait for me. If you dare to steal my Anna's things, one day I will make you spit them out. Anna said angrily. As she spoke, she came to Jim's side, emitting a silver glow. This was the treasure hunter's space teleportation, and Jim had seen it more than once. Anna was going to run away with him. Jim was a little conflicted, wondering whether he should say hello to Lear, but the next moment a wave of invisible power appeared, and he and Ina disappeared. Watching Ina disappear, Derek's face became increasingly gloomy. Two of them had already escaped, and he must not let Lear escape as well. He was about to take action when he saw the blue gem in Lear's hand emitting light. Derek's outstretched hand stopped where it was, and he felt that the power in his body was sealed. Rohel, who was not far away, also fell straight down. Without the power of the corrupt law, the body of the founding king turned into a corpse again. Lear also felt that the power in his body was completely sealed, but his own attributes were still there. He took out the night rose and swung the sword at Yao Yao, who was tied to a chair beside him, killing her directly. Then he turned around and ran away. The Starlight Sealing Stone is very powerful. It can seal the law abilities of surrounding targets and only retain the physical attributes of the professional. If Dritch was a high-level professional, Lear had the confidence that he could kill the opponent by relying on his physical attributes during the ban period, but Dritch was an extraordinary professional. The attributes of a professional who has undergone an extraordinary transformation are far beyond the reach of an ordinary professional. If Lear could use Aslan's royal swordsmanship, he could give it a try, but all his abilities are sealed. By the time Derek reacted, Lear had already run far away. Li Huan and Dahe outside also ran for their lives and soon disappeared in the tomb passage. End of this chapter. Chapter 86 High-Level Professional Trials. The group ran away at full speed. Mr. Lear, how did you kill Yao Yao? Li Huan asked while running. Can't you strangers be resurrected? Lear asked back. Li Huan was stunned for a moment, and Dahe was also stunned for a moment, but they quickly reacted. Aliens can be resurrected, so killing them and then resurrecting them is the same as saving them. Are NPCs so smart now? The two were speechless. Mr. Lear, what should we do now? You should leave here first. I need to inform the Golden Church and the royal family of the news of the corrupt believers as soon as possible. Lear said, taking out 20 gold coins and handing them to the two of them. As for the rewards of your spells and swordsmanship, come to Steward House when you have time. Spells need to be transferred to a wizard to learn, and swordsmanship requires constant practice. With these quick words, Lear rushed out of the tomb first, and Derek did not catch up with him. Li Huan and Dahe looked at each other. They had a premonition that something big was going to happen soon. Back at Steward House, Lear opened his character panel. Now that the whereabouts of the corrupt believers were known, he needed to prepare well. The fourth ring of the bloody revival requires killing the true spirit of the corrupt law. In the previous life, the Golden Church was able to deal with the corrupt true spirit, which means that the class of the corrupt true spirit should not exceed the holy level. But even so, the other party is a real god, and it is not easy for Lear to get his head from the Golden Church. He glanced at the experience points accumulated on his panel, which had reached 140 million, enough for him to reach level 60 and advance to a higher level. Lear didn't hesitate and chose to upgrade directly. The experience points were consumed rapidly, and soon Lear's level reached level 60. Your level is increased to level 60, you gain health plus 1700, magic plus 170, free attribute points plus 17. Your level has reached the current level limit and cannot be upgraded, based on your profession and affinity with the law. You have triggered the Blood Apostle Profession High-Level Advancement Task, Mission, Blood Apostles Career Trial, Mission Objective, kill a legal professional who is at least high level. Quest. Reward, Blood Apostle class upgrade, high-level Blood Apostle class skills. A series of system prompts came, and Lier's level reached the upper limit of mid-level professionals, with only a little experience value left. A law professional needs to reach the corresponding law affinity requirement to break through the class. His arcane law affinity is far from reaching the level of breaking through to a high level, so he can only improve his class through the Blood Apostle profession. Kill a law professional who is no less than high level. Looking at the professional advancement task, Lier frowned. It is not easy to find high-level legal professionals. Even Duke Norton is just a high-level 1. Are they looking for a chance to kill Duke Norton? But the other party only wants to send 50 gold coins and his daughter. He sighed and closed the character panel. I had originally planned to see if I could gain some new skills by breaking through to a higher level, but now I can only take it one step at a time. But he had no choice but to add the 17 free attribute points now. He needed to consider whether to add them to strength, physique, dexterity, or intelligence and mysticism. With Aslan Royal swordsmanship, his strength, constitution, and dexterity can be converted to each other, and adding 17 points is just icing on the cake. As for adding intelligence and mysticism, he has very few spell skills. To be honest, it seems that only Lifebind Shackles and Blood Resonance can benefit from the bonus of mysterious attributes. The next day, when Lier was about to go out, he saw Albert and Greta, who had packed their luggage. "Uncle Albert, why do we have to move out?" Greta was a little confused. After returning from the banquet yesterday, Albert said he wanted to move out of Stewart House, but how could he move out of his own home? "I have already agreed with Avian that I will be guiding the Royal Knights for a while, so I will be staying with the Knights." Albert gave the reason he had already thought of. "But why should I move out too?" Greta still felt very strange. Albert glanced at Greta, and Lier also came over. The purpose of moving away was of course to prevent Greta from knowing that the princess was here. "You are a girl, living alone in a man's house. Aren't you afraid of being gossiped about? I can't let your reputation be ruined in the Stewart family," Albert said with a serious expression. Greta was stunned for a moment, glanced at Lier, and said nonchalantly, "Who dares to say that? Besides, Lier will definitely become my Lionheart Knight. What does it matter if I live here?" "Well, whether Lier can become your Lionheart Knight or not is something we'll have to talk about later. Duval asked me to keep a close eye on you before he left. Don't be willful. Come with me to the Kingdom Knights." Albert did not give Greta a chance to choose and made the decision directly. Greta pouted, somewhat dissatisfied, but had no choice but to obey. Lier walked forward, helped the two pack their luggage, and said gently, "Greta, it's not easy for a girl like you to live alone in my place, but even if you move out, you are always welcome to come and see me." Looking at the gentle Lier in the sunshine, Greta finally nodded. Soon, the luggage was packed. Lier saw the two out and walked out of the gate. Just as he was about to load the luggage onto the carriage, several carriages drove over not far away. The car stopped in front of Stewart's residence. Under the gaze of the three people, Duke Norton got down from the carriage, followed by Adele. As soon as he got out of the carriage, he smiled when he saw Lier and Albert. "Duke Stewart, I have brought the compensation you promised me before," Duke Norton said, clapping his hands, and the servants in the carriage lifted a large box down from the carriage. "There are 50,000 gold coins in the box. There are 10 boxes in total, 500,000 gold coins, all on the carriage." Duke Norton opened the box that had been taken down, and a golden scene was revealed. Albert glanced at it indifferently. 500,000 gold coins was indeed a lot, but for Stewart, it was nothing. He did not take the Duke of Norton's apology at the banquet seriously. In his opinion, the Duke of Norton and the family behind him were nothing but a worm. This bug offended Stewart's dignity and should be crushed to death, but the worm was very smart. It knelt down and begged for mercy. More importantly, Lier accepted the other party's daughter. The Duke of Norton had a flattering smile on his face, and Adele, who was beside him, walked carefully to Lier. Albert looked at this scene. His son inherited Stewart's tradition of universal love, but it didn't matter. It was natural for men to love beauty. Yet he nodded gently, "Leave your things here, and you can go." End of this chapter. Chapter 87. Being treated as a player. Banklier didn't know what Albert was thinking, otherwise he would probably have cried out for injustice. He didn't mind at all that Albert attacked Duke Norton, and even after receiving the career advancement mission, he had some thoughts about Duke Norton. Seeing that Albert accepted his compensation, Duke Norton breathed a sigh of relief. carried 10 boxes of gold coins into Stewart House, and found a reason to leave. Before leaving, he glanced at Adele. After the Duke of Norton left, Albert also left with Greta, leaving only Lear and Adele. Duke Norton should not have sent you here just to me. Lear put his arm around Adele's waist and pulled the girl into the mansion. My father asked me to keep an eye on you. Adele did not hide anything. Lear smiled when he heard this. It seemed that the Duke of Norton was still unwilling to give up, or was he unwilling to accept the result? But Lear didn't care. You will stay with me from now on and be a maid to Leo first, Lear said to Adele. Adele nodded. She was sold to Lear by her father and was strictly speaking a slave. No matter what Lear wanted her to do, she had no right to refuse. In the afternoon, Li Huanhuan and the other two found Lear again to learn skills. Li Huanhuan and Dahe both chose swordsmanship, which was indeed a wise choice. Basic spells can be learned at the Arcane Academy for a little money, but sword skills, even basic ones, can only be learned by truly experienced warriors. In the end, Lear chose a universal sword technique that did not require affinity for the law, and taught the white crow sword technique to Li Huanhuan and Dahe. Only Yao Yao was looking on helplessly with a pitiful look on his face. After learning the sword skills, the two practiced for a while. In order to fully exert the effect of sword skills, they must fully master the sword skills. When they just learned it, the blessing they can get is less than 50%, but this did not cause any trouble for Li Huanhuan and others. Instead, they felt that the game was more realistic. If they completely mastered this sword technique, they should be able to use it in reality. Although it should not have any skill effects, it can also be considered a skill. Both of them were a little surprised. They put down their swords and came in front of Lear. What's the matter? Lear asked. The two looked at each other, and then each took out the coins they had on them. Mr. Lear, could you please keep this money for us? Lear was stunned for a moment, looking at the coins the three people took out, most of which were given by him. It's like this, Mr. Lear, you know we are aliens from another world. We have a limited time to come to this world this time, and we will have to go back soon. We don't know how long it will take for us to come back next time. We can't take this money back to our world, so could you please keep it for us temporarily? Li Huanhuan explained. A strange expression appeared on Lear's face. Did they think he was a bank? The props used during the internal beta test will be cleared during the public beta test. It is indeed a smart choice to give him the money now and take it back after the public beta test, of course. Lear agreed happily. Li Huanhuan and Dahe looked delighted. After playing the game for such a long time, they also knew the importance of money. These 20-odd gold coins might not be a lot to Lear, but for early players, it was a huge sum of money. Yao Yao looked at Li Huanhuan and Dahe's money and felt so heartbroken that she couldn't breathe. She did not receive the mission to find the corrupt believers, nor did she get the reward of 10 gold coins. She had spent all her money long ago and was now a true pauper. The three men did not stay in the Stewart mansion for long. They gave the money to Lear and left. After the three left, Lear also went out, planning to go to the Lord's cemetery again, and if possible, tell the Golden Church about the traces of the corrupt believers. The whereabouts of Ophinia cannot be told, but the traces of the corrupt believers also have a reward of 300,000 experience points. He walked out of the door and walked towards the Lord's cemetery for a while before he saw that the believers of the Golden Church had surrounded a villa. Lear frowned, stepped forward and asked, what happened? The golden cultist nearby turned around and was stunned when he saw Lear's face. Then he said enthusiastically, Mr. Lear, it is Viscount Conchita Gavin who has been infected with the corruption disease. Corruption? Lear raised his eyebrows. Can I go in and take a look? The golden cultist hesitated for a moment, looked at Lear's serious expression, and finally nodded. When entering the villa, Lear smelled a foul smell. Bishop Gas, please save my father, a young man standing in the middle of the crowd said excitedly. Don't worry, your father hasn't been infected for long and will recover soon. Bishop Gas said, and then he raised the scepter, and the blessing from heaven began to brew. Beside Bishop Gas, Sylvia was also there, frowning as she looked at Viscount Gavin who was infected with the corruption disease. There are believers of the Golden Church patrolling every day, and no abnormalities have been found in the noble area. How did Viscount Gavin get infected with the corruption disease? She felt the need to interrogate. She was waiting for Bishop Gas to heal Viscount Gavin, when she suddenly found someone else beside her. Your Excellency the High Priest, I heard that there has been an outbreak of corruption here. Lear smiled at Sylvia. Sylvia was stunned for a moment, and it took him a while to react. Lear Stewart? Who let you in? I just heard that there was an outbreak of corruption here, so I came in to take a look. Lear waved his hand. Your Excellency the High Priest, Do you think that Viscount Gavin's corruption is related to the corrupt believers? Lear asked again. As soon as Lear said this, Viscount Gavin's son, who was watching his father slowly recover, suddenly changed his expression. Lear, what do you mean by this? Do you mean to say that my father communicated corrupt heresy? Viscount Gavin's son was a little nervous, communicating with corrupt believers. He thought about Marquis Hadji, who had provoked him face to face at the banquet. He heard that the entire family had been blocked by the Golden Church and was under investigation. No, that's not what I meant, Ryan. I just wanted to say that perhaps Viscount Gavin had gone to the hiding place of the corrupt believers without his knowledge. Lear shook his head. Sylvia's eyes lit up. What Lear said was absolutely right. It is indeed possible. Looking at Sylvia's moved expression, Lear smiled in his heart. He was worrying about how to tell the Golden Church about the whereabouts of the corrupt believers. It would be suspicious if he told it directly, and Viscount Gavin's infection gave him an opportunity. This not only completes the task, but also avoids arousing suspicion. So, Ryan, do you know where your father has been recently? Lear asked. End of this chapter. Chapter 88. The resurrected noble's Viscount Gavin's son was stunned by what Lear said, and began to think seriously under two pairs of serious gazes. I remember that my father went to the arena the day before yesterday, went to the opera house yesterday, and went to the cemetery to pay respects to the ancestors this morning, he recalled slowly. It's here, Lear said suddenly. Everyone was shocked by Lear. It's the cemetery, Lear said seriously. Corrupt believers can control the undead. There are so many noble professionals and kings of the royal family buried in the Lord's cemetery. Wouldn't they be tempted? Lear continued. Sylvia's eyes gradually lit up as Lear spoke. Have you sent people to patrol the Lord's cemetery? Sylvia turned and asked the golden cultist beside him. Your Excellency the High Priest, that is an area under the jurisdiction of the royal family and the Golden Church cannot interfere. The Golden Church members shook their heads awkwardly. Sylvia felt more and more that what Lear said was correct. Send someone to check the Lord's tomb immediately. Yes. The Golden Believer nodded in response, then quickly turned and left. Forget it, I'll go with you. Sylvia was already impatient. Gas, I leave this to you. She instructed Bishop Gas, who was still healing Viscount Gavin. Then she looked at Lear, who was standing beside her. Liar, if the corrupt believers are really in the Lord's cemetery, the Golden Church will reward you. After saying this, she did not stay any longer and turned and left in a hurry. Lear smiled and nodded, while Viscount Gavin's son was a little depressed. Wasn't it me who provided this information? Why was Lear rewarded? He remembered that Sylvia had invited Lear alone at the previous banquet. There must be an affair. He was furious in his heart, but on the surface, he could only pretend nothing had happened. Lear did not notice Ryan's emotions. Since he had already told the Golden Church the whereabouts of the corrupt believers, all he had to do next was wait for the two sides to go to war. Lord's cemetery. At this time, the fog in the cemetery became thicker, with a faint black color. Ever since someone broke into the catacombs last night, Darich discovered that the catacombs' ability to suppress the corrupt law aura in Eric had disappeared, and now that the smell of corruption has spread, he doesn't have much time left. Almost all the corpses in the entire Lord's cemetery have been transformed into undead by him. Even though the founding Emperor Rohel has been dead for many years, he still has extraordinary strength after being resurrected as an undead. There were several other kings who also had high-level strength. These undead should be able to help him stop the Golden Church. He failed last time in the Rhodes Empire, but this time he will let the corrupt true spirit come no matter what. He raised his head to look at Eric, who was hanging in the air. At this moment, Eric's belly was bulging and he no longer looked like a human. Darich was admiring the perfect work of art in front of him, but suddenly his eyes changed and he looked towards the outside of the tomb. Somebody is coming. Outside the Lord's cemetery, Sylvia looked at the mist and foul smell in the air, and was sure that she had found the right place. Notify Rossering you are immediately to seal off the Lord's cemetery. She gave the order immediately. This time she would not let the corrupt believers have a chance to escape. Everyone was mobilized. Upon receiving the news, King Rosser immediately dispatched the royal knights to the scene, and many nobles also rushed over. Not only the ancestors of the royal family of all generations are buried in the Lord's cemetery, but also their ancestors. Looking at the black fog covering the sky above the cemetery, everyone's expression was very ugly. The corrupt believers were hiding right under their noses and they had no idea. Damn corrupt believers, how dare you blaspheme the ancestors of my Cain family? Someone was furious. With this roar, emotions were aroused. I know you are very angry, so I called you here to eliminate the corrupt believers. Sylvia looked around. Professionals above the high level, follow me in, and the rest of you stay outside to guard. Don't let any heretics escape. Sylvia was talking, and she wanted to give a few more instructions, but someone else's voice came from the side. What is that? Sylvia frowned and looked up. I in the mist, under the tombstone, arms broke out of the ground, then slowly crawled out from the ground, stood up twistedly, and pairs of dark green eyes stared at the people outside. Father? Someone looked at the figure in the mist with an expression of disbelief. Is that grandfather? The nobles from outside started to riot. The ancestors who were once revered have now reappeared before our eyes, but in this posture, the muscles on his body had almost rotted away, and only his bones were still intact. His identity could barely be recognized by his clothes. This is utter blasphemy. Sylvia looked at the corpses that kept crawling out of the graves, and his expression became extremely ugly. These corpses all exude the power of law. They are all professionals. The weakest ones are all beginner professionals. She even saw professionals whose energy fluctuations reached a high level. What kind of disaster would be caused if such a large number of professional undead rushed out of the cemetery? This is different from the poor people in the slums before. Even if those poor people were transformed into undead, they were only at the level of ordinary soldiers. In front of professionals, they were like paper, but now it's different. What did those damn pagans do? King Rosser's face turned pale. His eyes swept across the many undead in the mist and were finally attracted by a figure. The figure slowly walked out from the depths of the cemetery, and wherever he passed, the surrounding undead fell to their knees. The figure was wearing tattered armor and holding a long sword. Unlike the undead around him, this figure just looked a little haggard. His skin was pale, his hair was gray, and his body showed no signs of decay. Instead, he exuded an indescribable majesty. King Rosser looked at the man who kept moving and slowly opened his mouth. Rohel. Ancestor? He said the man's name. Some nobles around who knew history were horrified when they heard this name. Rocher? Could it be the founding king? Your Majesty, the founding king? I remember that King Rohel was a saint-level war law professional, right? Even His Majesty Rohel was transformed into an undead? Such a powerful aura. Is this an extraordinary level of undead? While the nobles were in shock, Rocher had already walked to the front of the cemetery. Behind him, other powerful figures also walked out. Rosser looked at the figures who were slowly walking out, and his anger reached its peak. These were all ancestors of the royal family. End of this chapter. Chapter 89. The Blood Apostles prepared. Goth undead nobles let out creepy roars at the nobles outside the cemetery, but did not leave the cemetery at all, as if they were guarding something. On the ground of the cemetery, a faint fluorescent light slowly lit up, bringing an indescribable feeling, and soon enveloped the entire cemetery. Sylvia's face turned ugly. She knew she couldn't wait any longer, so she immediately ordered the elimination of the undead nobles. The nobles around looked at their ancestors who had come back from the dead, and after a moment's hesitation, they rushed forward directly. The scene suddenly became chaotic. I'm sorry, my dear father. You are already dead and should never wake up again. I will take good care of the Kane family's inheritance for you. The pagan who turned you into a ghost will definitely be purified. A noble in gorgeous clothes spoke righteously and took out a staff from the storage items. The arcane light shines. King Rosser also came before many previous kings. His ancestor Rohel, who turned into an undead, was a professional of extraordinary level like him, and the other kings of all generations were also of high level, feeling the same aura as Rosser. The founding king Rohel, who was originally controlled by corrupt laws, showed some strange colors in his eyes. You are the descendant of Briefil. He stammered, and King Rosser's eyes widened. The late king was still conscious, but before Rosser could be shocked for long, the eyes of the former king Rohel were once again eroded by the dark green corrupt laws, and the rotten sword was raised high. The noble quarters became as chaotic as the slums before them. The fog continued to spread from the Lord's cemetery, and many noble families on the street had received the notice and fled towards the citizen area. Lear stood in a secluded alley, with the blood incarnation standing before him. The blood incarnation replicated his blood king's robe and other relics of the blood law, but without a good weapon. Lear thought for a moment and handed the night rose to the incarnation of blood. The extraordinary night rose combined with the enhancement of the blood vortex can reach the level of a holy weapon. which Lear has never used. After fully arming the incarnation of blood, Lear nodded with satisfaction. Next, he will have to face the undead nobles in the cemetery, as well as the corrupt law spirit that is about to arrive. And he wants to steal something in between. It is better to let the incarnation do this kind of dangerous thing. Anyway, the incarnation's strength is no different from his original body. Although he can play in his original form and be resurrected in his blood incarnation after death, a gentleman does not stand on a dangerous wall. It's safer to stay behind the scenes of the blood incarnation, who had transformed into a blood apostle, put on the devilish mask again, controlled the blood incarnation, turned around and walked out of the alley, heading towards the direction of the Lord's tomb. There are many professionals who have turned into undead in the Lord's cemetery, and there should be some high-level undead professionals as well. I wonder if killing these undead professionals can be counted as completing the Blood Apostle's professional mission of advancing to a high-level level. Lear suddenly thought of a question. As he was thinking, he turned a corner and suddenly 3 people came towards him: Albert, Avian and Greta. Lear was stunned for a moment, and the 3 people in front were also frightened by the sudden appearance of this devil. Blood Apostle? Avian directly revealed Lear's identity. Lear did not answer Avian's words. The more he spoke, the more likely he would reveal his flaws. He raised the invisible night rose in his hand, and his eyes emitted a strange red light. Are you here to help eliminate the corrupt believers in the aristocratic district again? Avian was not wary of the Blood Apostle's actions, but asked seriously. Lear was stunned for a moment. This was somewhat different from the scene he had imagined. Albert, who was standing by, also stepped forward and looked at the devil in front of him with interest. I know you. You were the one who cleansed the slums of corruption. You said you were an apostle of blood, but you used the power of the golden law to cleanse the slums. It's really interesting that heretics can actually obtain the gift of gold. You have fooled the people of the Golden Church. Lear listened to Albert's words. What he did in the slums could only deceive ordinary poor citizens, but could not deceive the truly powerful professionals at all. After all, describing the sacred light as the power of blood is really a bit contrary to Tiangang. Even the Golden Law goddess couldn't stand it, and it directly sealed his skills, and his affinity with the Golden Law also dropped by 10%. Don't be too nervous. I am a believer in war, not one of those xenophobic guys in the Golden Church. Albert smiled, and suddenly thought of Lear. The heretical law that Lear had come into contact with before seemed to be blood. He tried to resurrect his dead sister with the power of blood, but failed in the end. Instead, the seal was broken, and the real Lear awakened. Since you are different from the Golden Church, then let's say goodbye. Lear answered in a fake deep voice, then jumped onto the roof in a flash. Although Albert's attitude seemed to be not harsh towards the believers of the heretical law, Lear still did not want to expose his identity. Watching the Blood Apostle go away, Albert did not stop him. Let's go, we should also go to the Lord's cemetery to take a look. He waved at Avian and Greta. Lord's cemetery, underground vault. Derek looked at Eric, who was hanging in the air. Eric had completely lost his human form. His whole body had swelled into a huge ball of flesh with a large number of mosquito and fly larvae constantly wriggling on it. There is only a vaguely discernible human face, which proves that he was once a human being. From the flesh ball, countless spiderweb-like filamentary structures spread out in the underground tomb chamber, connecting with the ritual array nodes above the tomb chamber that covered the entire surface cemetery. It is almost complete. When all the nodes are connected, the undead in the entire cemetery can be sacrificed, including the nobles above, and corruption will come. He raised his head and looked at the dome that had become dirty. It seemed as if he could see through the dome and see the undead and nobles fighting on the surface. Rose, you hold back these undead. The power of the heretical laws here is becoming stronger and stronger. I must find the true location of the corrupt believers. Sylvia emitted a holy light to repel the undead in front of him. A feeling of uneasiness spread in her heart, and she didn't have much time left. She was once the Golden Saint, and she knew better than anyone what kind of impact it would cause if a true spirit of heresy law were to come to the world that is a god. Even if it is weak and has no power, a god is still a god after all. He and humans are creatures from 2 different dimensions. Chapter 90. Piercing the former king. Sylvia turned around and ran deep into the cemetery, leaving Rosser in great pain. The former king Rohel was once a saint, and now he has been resurrected as a dead spirit. Although his strength has declined significantly, the aura of a saint on him has not disappeared. The majesty of the saint class makes Rosser feel under great pressure. You seem to need help. A hearty voice sounded, and Albert joined the war with a giant sword in hand. As soon as he entered the cemetery, he felt the pressure of the saint falling on him, but he was not afraid at all. Albert. Rosser showed a look of joy. It seems that I have to take action, Rosser. Albert laughed and rushed to the side of the late King Rochelle, slashing with the giant sword in his hand. The undead Rochelle instinctively swung his sword to block, but the next second, the giant sword directly shattered the sword in Rochelle's hand. The fragments of the sword flew out and landed on the grass in the cemetery not far away. Looking at the shattered sword in his hand, the undead Rochelle was abnormally stunned for a moment. This sword had accompanied him for hundreds of years, but now it was completely destroyed. He seemed to have regained some of his will at this moment, but was soon eroded by the corrupt laws again. Rosser breathed a sigh of relief. Albert always made him feel at ease, just like when he was not yet king. No matter what kind of enemy it was, they would only fall under Albert's heavy sword. Albert destroyed the undead Rochelle's sword with one blow, but he did not let down his guard and continued to attack Rochelle. Rocher, who lost his weapon, was like a tiger without teeth and claws, and could only retreat step by step at the hands of Albert. All the nobles showed excited expressions, but no one noticed that in the thick black fog, a pair of scarlet eyes were watching everything in front of them. The blood demon was hidden in the black fog, and he raised the invisible night rose in his hand. The blood swirl of the law relic seemed to have turned into real blood, entwining around the night rose in Lear's hand. Gradually, the invisible night rose revealed the sword body, and gradually changed under the interweaving of blood. The blood coiled around the sword like a spiral, making the entire rapier heavier. When the blood swirl completely merged into the night rose, the rapier in Lear's hand had changed drastically. It turned into a spiral blood-red heavy sword. It is about 4 meters long and looks more like a lance than a rapier. Blessed by the blood vortex, your weapon Night Rose undergoes a blood transformation, and the weapon effect changes. Name: Bloody Rose. Category: Heavy Thrust. Sword Grade: Holy Attributes. Attack Strength plus 400, Attack Speed plus 10%. Feature 1: Thorns. The attack adds blood erosion, can easily pierce the target's defense, and cause difficult to heal bleeding effect on the target. Feature 2: Blood-Sucking Thorns. Any damage caused by the blood rose will cause great pain to the opponent, and the attack will also have the effect of devouring the target's health to restore its own blood-sucking effect. Special Skill 5. Death Thorn. Piercing, consumes % of health points, charges and throws out a bloody rose, and launches a devastating blow. No matter where the target is, as long as it is locked, it will hit. After hitting, the bloody rose can be recalled freely. The cooling time is 10 minutes. Special Skill 2, Dynasty Sword. Skills: elegantly dodge the target's attack, enter an untargetable state for 1 second, and gain the effect of Burning Blood Thorn in the next attack. The attack causes the target to enter a burning blood state and cannot actively restore health points. The duration is 10 minutes and the cooldown time is 10 minutes. Requirements: War Law Affinity 30%, Blood Law Affinity 50%. Looking at the attributes of the new weapon in his hand, Lear felt silent. It's not like he had never seen a holy weapon before, but this was the first time he had seen such a powerful holy weapon. It was already comparable to many epic-level equipment that Lear had seen in his previous life. He looked back at the former King Rochelle, who was being beaten back by Albert. At this time, Rochelle's health bar was almost gone. Without his weapon, he could only be slowly worn down by the siege of numerous professionals. Lear watched quietly and slowly raised the heavy sword in his hand. A dark red light flowed through him, and his life was slipping away. Then it merged into the blood-red rose, wrapping the entire blood-red rose, as if it had turned into a real spear. Holding the spear high, Lear converted all his attributes into strength and threw the bloody rose out in an instant. A sharp buzzing sound was heard, and Albert in the center was the first to react. He felt the breath of death and retreated instantly. Before the other professionals could react, they felt a powerful shockwave sweeping over them, and they were knocked to the ground one by one. The black fog around was dispersed, and a spear flashing a ferocious red light pointed directly at the late King Rochelle. Rocher only had time to raise his head before he felt a huge force coming from his heart, and then he was carried flying backwards. The pale body knocked down one tombstone after another, and was finally nailed to the Rochelle fountain statue at the deepest part. This sudden scene plunged the scene into a deathly silence. Sylvia, who was originally looking for the whereabouts of the corrupt believer, was also blown away by the strong shock wave and finally managed to stand firm. Albert's eyelids twitched as he looked at the former king, who was knocked flying. Even if he wanted to hit the former King Rochelle like this, he would need to use all his strength. He turned his head and looked in the direction where the spear came from. The black fog around him had been dispersed by the speed of breaking through the air, revealing a figure in the black fog. He was tall, wearing a long robe, With a ferocious face and a strange red light flashing in his eyes, Albert opened his mouth in disbelief. This attack was actually launched by the Blood Apostle. When he saw the Blood Apostle just now, he clearly felt that the other party was only a mid-level professional and had not yet broken through to the high level. But now he actually defeated the former King Rochelle, who had the pressure of a saint, with a single blow. Could it be that this Blood Apostle has been playing the pig and eating the tiger? After a brief silence, the others also reacted and looked in Lear's direction. When they saw Lear's appearance, they all fell silent. Another Blood Apostle. The previous incident in the slums was settled by the Blood Apostles. Although the other party shamelessly attributed the power of the Golden Law to the Blood Law, the achievements of the Blood Apostles are obvious to all, and now you're out to help them deal with the corrupt undead. Is it possible that the Blood Apostles and the corrupted believers have a grudge against each other? Or is there some other conspiracy? Lear didn't care about the reactions of the nobles around him. Under the bloody face, Lear stretched out his hand expressionlessly, and the blood-red rose nailed to the heart of the former King Rohel turned into a ray of blood and returned to his hand. You killed the spirit of the late King Rohel. Superb, and you gain 200,000 experience points. End of this chapter.